right, here we go with part 2.
This is, in fact, what any lawyer is expected to do for his clients, to obtain what is, in his professional estimation, the best possible outcome for the client. The two potential outcomes for Brendan Dassey were 1. A not guilty plea and likely conviction at trial, which, under Wisconsin law, would mean an automatic sentence of life in prison, or 2, a guilty plea, a deal to testify against Avery, and 20 years in prison, meaning that Dassey could be released at age 36 with plenty of time to live his life as a free man. On balance...
Okay, he's 16. Okay? He can be released 20 years later when he's 36 with plenty of time to live his life as a free man. Are you kidding me? When you're innocent, why would you do that? Why would you take a plea deal for 20 years? Why not go to court hoping that your fucking attorney is going to defend you and keep you from going to prison for something you didn't do? Which is why Brendan asked for a new attorney, because he believed he was guilty. He told everyone in the media that he was guilty. Brendan knew he believed he was guilty, and all he wanted was somebody to help him. At least he was smart enough to know that, and he tried to get it. Unfortunately, the judge took a little too long to give it to him, I think.
Which option should Kaczynski have picked? He had a client who had confessed in excruciating detail in an interrogation that a judge had already found not to be at all coercive, and whose confession matched up with a steadily growing amount of physical.
Okay, first of all, the judge is not an expert. Okay, the judge is there to interpret the law. He is not an expert. So this is something that comes up at trial. Unfortunately, he didn't get that. He didn't get those experts up there to talk about coerced confessions and all that. I don't know why that wasn't done. Should have been. I know that's damn sure what's happening now, though.
Evidence. Given all that, would a reasonable attorney really gamble with going to trial? Or would he advise that his client testify against the uncle who had molested him and forced him to commit unspeakable acts?
Yes, that is probably what you should do if your client is telling you that they're guilty. You should probably take a plea deal. You should probably testify against your uncle and take a plea deal. Pay your time. You are guilty, you deserve it. That is not something that you tell someone who has repeatedly told you that they're innocent. Repeatedly. Okay? Told you, told the cops, told O'Kelly. He told them all he didn't do it. He's told everyone he didn't do it. So that is not something you tell someone who is telling you that they did not do all those things that they said in the confession.
Yes, Kaczynski should obviously have been present when his investigator interviewed his clients, but his absence isn't evidence that Kaczynski is part of a conspiracy, but rather that he was somewhat incompetent.
Yeah. And I thank God for that, because that is finally what got him removed as Brendan's attorney. So thank God he was incompetent enough for the judge to be forced to do something about it.
That said, he clearly made the right choice in trying to steer Dassey toward a plea deal and testifying against his uncle, who in episode 4 faces an ever-growing conspiracy that now includes an accusation that Halbach's car key was actually planted in Avery's bedroom.
For them to be able to say only Stephen's DNA is on this indicates to me that that key was scrubbed clean and his DNA was placed on it.
Oh, really? Well,
really?
Wouldn't it just as easily indicate to someone else, someone perhaps who doesn't represent Stephen Avery, that Avery himself wiped fingerprints from the key but stupidly touched it afterwards with a sweaty finger? Seriously, what's more likely? That a
Really? You really think that Stephen is going to clean a key off to remove his DNA and Teresa's DNA and then be dumb enough to pick it up again? Because that makes sense. That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. You just solved the case right there. I mean, that's probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Law enforcement officer took Halbach's key from wherever it might have been, wiped it of all her fingerprints, and then planted Avery's DNA on it, or that Avery tried wiping the key of print but couldn't keep a drop of his sweat from landing on it. Avery's attorney, Jerome Buting, is again making an extraordinary claim for which he must present extraordinary evidence, such as an investigator's DNA turning up on the key or someone spotting an investigator planting the key in the bedroom. Moreover, the key was not, as the series suggests, simply lying out in the open on the floor of Avery's bedroom. It fell out of the back of a bookcase where it had been hidden when Lieutenant James Lank searched Avery's bedroom. Yes, the notorious James Lank.
What?
Actually, you're wrong. Okay, it was Colburn that was searching the bookcase. It was Colburn that took all the magazines and the evidence out of the bookcase. He completely pulled everything out of it, separated the items into things that they were going to collect as evidence and things that they were going to put back. All right, he didn't have a box big enough to put all those items into. So that's when Link went out to the living room to get a bigger box for Colburn. Okay? As Colburn is throwing all this other stuff back into the bookcase, roughly, he says, knocks the back of it loose, and the key pops out sideways and away from the wall. Because that's how gravity works. Really? Whatever. I'm just saying, Colburn put all the stuff back into the bookcase and had gotten up and walked over to another part of the room and was searching another part of the room when Link came back in with the box for the items that he collected out of the bookcase. Link stops in the doorway and he's like, "Hey, there's a key." Come on. Link, how hard is that with his gloves, his clean gloves, to drop a key on the floor on his way out, drop a key on the floor on his way in? Kacharski, whatever his name is, how you say it, sitting on the bed filling out paperwork. Link is walking in after grabbing the box. Colburn is over distracted looking at another part of the room now. Colburn might not even have known. But I can tell you that if you look in the, I believe it's the pre-trial testimony of Kacharski, he said that key was not there. Colburn, in the trial testimony, said it wasn't there before. How could I have missed that? Because it wasn't there. He obviously did not knock it out of the back of the bookcase and not see it as he was getting up off the floor to go to another part of the room. I'm sorry, that didn't happen. So, come on. The key was planted. I'm gonna just take a wild guess and say by Link, because Link was in the right place at the right time.
One guy's name just kept coming up over and over and over every place we looked at critical moments, and that was Lieutenant James Link. And I said to myself, whoa, this is starting to sound more than just coincidental.
But in order to establish that it is in fact more than coincidental, there needs to be some affirmative evidence that Link planted the key. Maybe someone who saw him with the key. Maybe someone who saw him obtain Avery's DNA and smear it on the key. Maybe some of his own DNA on the key. Unsurprisingly, there is none of this evidence in episode 4. Only Buting's unsubstantiated claim that these may somehow be more than coincidence.
First of all, Stephen does not have to prove his innocence. Stephen does not have to prove anything. Okay? The state has the burden of proof, not Steven. Okay? So, without having a fucking video camera, there is no way to prove that Link did anything, that Colburn did anything, that anybody else did anything. Because there is no video proof. No one saw them do it. No one's going to tell, even if they did. Okay? So, there is no way to prove that. But I can tell you one thing. I don't care if they didn't plant the key. Prove Steven put it there. Because it has his DNA on it. Does that prove that he put it there? No, it doesn't. It just proves his DNA is on that key. That's all it proves. That is all. It doesn't prove he killed her. It doesn't prove he put the key there. But, you know, if you've got something better than that, please give me one thing that links Steven to killing Teresa. Just one. One piece of proof that he killed her. One thing.
How exactly? Well, that's left to the audience's imagination. And so is why Avery might not have used his salvage yard's car crusher to destroy Halbach's car.
There's a crusher on the property. He knows how to use the crusher. He was operating the crusher the day before it was found. And yet this vehicle wasn't crushed. Why not?
Well, let's see. Perhaps because Avery really is as stupid as his attorneys and making a murderer portray him to be? Someone like Avery, who the series establishes very early in the first episode, has an IQ of 70, would not be able to reason very effectively and may in fact short-sightedly have believed that because there were hundreds of cars on his property, no one would ever find Teresa Halbach.
Alright. So, I like how you're going back and forth here. First, you think Stephen Avery is some mastermind CSI forensics guy who can clean up blood. Small amount, large amount, all of it. All the DNA, all the blood, all of it. But now you're calling him stupid. Which is it? Is he stupid or is he genius? Because he can't be both. I don't think he's stupid, and I don't think he's a genius. I think what happened, obviously, is that he did not do this. And if somebody wants to make it look like he did, obviously, where are you going to put that stuff? Right there where it'll be found. You know, all that shit that was leaning up against the car? That was not there to hide it from the police. That was there to hide it from the family who knows the cars on their property. They know. They didn't put that shit there. That car looks too new. That car's too shiny, and it doesn't belong here. Obviously, they need to make it look like a piece of shit. They need to cover it up a little bit so it doesn't look out of place. That car was hidden from the family, not from the police. Just saying.
After all, it was found partially concealed under some branches. And it wasn't a Manitowoc sheriff's deputy who found it, it was a volunteer searcher.
It was Teresa's cousin, Pam Sturm, who found the car. Okay? An ex-PI, private investigator lady. It's shady enough as it is with that whole situation, but
if someone had placed it there in an effort to frame Avery, why not park it nearer to his home to make it a bit more obvious? And, for that matter, why go through the trouble of burning Halbach's body?
Oh, I don't know, maybe because he might notice it. Like I said, hiding it from the family, hiding it from the people that would notice that thing. Because it would stick out like a sore thumb in a whole field of rusty, parted out cars. Brand new looking, shiny, nice looking car. Gonna stick out. Of course it was put way off on the other side of the property from where it would be noticed. Just, you know.
If the goal was for Avery to be convicted of a crime, why try to erase evidence of that crime?
His blood was found inside the vehicle, but only in a few areas, spots, so to speak. There was evidence that he had a cut on his finger, but what didn't make sense was that there was no fingerprints of Avery's at all in or on the vehicle. That would mean if Avery was the killer, he had to have had gloves.
No, that does not mean that he had to be wearing gloves. It means that he wiped the car of fingerprints, but in so doing, he dripped blood from the open cut on his finger that Buting has conceded that he had.
Really? So he's wiping off all of his fingerprints with a dripping, bleeding cut on his finger, dropping blood all over the damn place. Something he can like see with his eyes. You can't see the fingerprints with your eyes. Now tell me how that makes sense, because that makes no sense. That is stupid. Those drops of blood are plain as day, especially the one by the ignition. Come on. I mean, that thing just sticks out like a sore thumb too. That he could not have possibly missed that if he was wiping the car down of his fingerprints. And if that's what he did, he didn't do a very damn good job, because they still found fingerprints that were not identified to be Teresa's or anyone in the families. So whose fingerprints were those? 8 different fingerprints, or 8 samples. I don't know if they belong to the same person or not. I have no idea. They weren't identified. We know who they don't belong to, and that's all that matters. Stephen obviously did not wipe the car down clean of fingerprints. Also, he did a pretty damn good job, if he was ever in that car, to remove all of his DNA too. Which, you know, he must have used that magic bleach that only removes the one specific person's DNA, blood, and everything that you want to make disappear, and leaves all the other crap.
Again, which sounds more likely? That Avery, in a hasty attempt to hide the car and wipe off his fingerprints from it, accidentally got some blood on the car and some of his DNA that was not from blood, remember, on the hood latch, or that a law enforcement officer, possibly James Lank or maybe Andrew Colborn, or someone else whose DNA was not found anywhere near the car, obtained DNA from Avery and then planted it. The series makes it seem that somehow that is more plausible because of what it makes out to be the single most damning piece of evidence against the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department: a vial of Stephen Avery's blood.
The seal was clearly broken on the outside of the box, and inside the box is a styrofoam kit. The seal is broken in that. We pulled the styrofoam halves apart, and there, in all of its glory, was a test tube that said Stephen Avery, inmate number, everything on it. The blood is liquid. And get this, right in the center of the top of the tube is a little tiny hole, just about the size of a hypodermic needle.
Naturally, the hole in the tube is, in this episode, not definitively shown to be from a needle, and there is no evidence whatsoever that, in fact, some officer went into that vial and planted blood in the RAV4. There is only an unchallenged, unproven opinion from Jerome Buting 2 minutes after he finds the sample. Yes, he literally jumps to this conclusion the second he finds the blood vial. Unfortunately for him and Stephen Avery, though, the evidence would once again contradict their conspiracy theory.
Oh God, the blood vial. Okay, yeah. You look at the later episodes where Buting is talking about how excited he was when he first found that, after calling the lab and the lab telling him, we don't do that, we don't put the little holes in the purple top tubes. Okay, it shouldn't be there. That's what he was told. He's calling Strang on the phone to tell him, hey, we just found this thing. Yeah, I'd be pretty excited about it too. He's jumping to conclusions because it looks like, it's pretty damn suspicious. I don't give a shit if they did or did not get that hole in the top of the tube from when they extracted the blood, or if somebody put a needle in that same exact hole to withdraw some blood. I don't care. The seals on the outside and the inside of that box and the styrofoam container were broken, covered with Scotch tape. Come on. It was tampered with. That is not how you seal evidence. Okay? That's pretty clear. Somebody tampered with it. I don't care if it was the cops and they used it to plant the blood, or the cops tampered with it just to look at his blood. It doesn't matter. It was tampered with, and that was clear. So yeah, I'd be pretty excited about that too. Yeah. But the problem is not just that there was a hole there. There was little specks of blood on the inside of the styrofoam container. There was blood around the seal, and as much as I've looked into this, I've heard repeated, like over and over and over, that the hole probably was put there when the blood was extracted, but the seal should not have been broken. If blood can get up in there, somebody had to have taken that purple top off. So, I don't care if they took the purple top off, used a syringe to take some blood out, or whatever they did. Whether they used that blood to plant in the car or not makes no difference. Not at all. It was still tampered with. And that is suspicious. That is not how you handle evidence. And that by itself should throw that whole thing out. Just blood, you found blood? Well, we've got a tampered box, a tampered evidence box with blood in it. So all the blood, can't use it. That's how it should have been, because it could have come from that. It could have, and I'm sure we'll get into the EDTA testing in the next one. We'll see. But anyway, all right, we're going to go on to episode 5.